You want answers?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended the Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
All right, folks, I hope you had a chance to watch Dr. Sanjay Gupta's special on weed yesterday on CNN. If not, I'm sure they're going to be replaying it. You've got to see it. It's one of the best documentaries on medical marijuana that I've ever seen. But the prohibitionists now are furiously trying to spin Dr. Sanjay Gupta's documentary and his apology to their own ends. And, of course, the number one guy on that list that I'm going to be paying attention to is Kevin Sabet and Project Sam. Now, since 1970, marijuana has been classified by the federal government as a Schedule I drug. And that means it has no recognized medical use in the United States. Yeah, never mind those 20 medical marijuana states and Washington, D.C. itself, where the federal government operates, that recognize marijuana's medical uses. It also means it has a high potential for abuse, despite ranking lower in addictiveness and toxicity than alcohol, tobacco, cocaine, meth, heroin, oxycodone, Vicodin, Dilaudid, and many more drugs, and unlike all those listed, cannot possibly cause a fatal overdose. And it has no accepted safety for use under medical supervision. Just forget about those tens of thousands of doctors who've recommended it in the medical marijuana states and the 5,000 years of safe medical use throughout human history. So, CNN's Dr. Sanjay Gupta rocked the mainstream and shocked drug policy advocates, both pro and anti-marijuana, with his recent apology regarding U.S. medical marijuana policy. He said, quote, "It doesn't have a high potential for abuse, and there are very legitimate medical applications. In fact, sometimes marijuana is the only thing that works. We have been terribly and systematically misled for nearly 70 years in the United States, and I apologize for my own role in that." End quote. Wow. Such an esteemed neurosurgeon and television personality pointing out that the emperor wears no clothes? Sounds like the death knell of a prohibitionist policy to me. But the industries that depend on the criminalization of marijuana have been fighting against the acceptance of whole plant cannabis as a legal medical alternative, whether to protect the profits of their products, aka pharmaceuticals, or their services, incarceration and rehab. And no group has been more vocal about the need to continue the prosecution of marijuana users, even medical users, than Project Sam, the alleged smart approaches to marijuana. Founded by Kevin Sabet, a lifelong moral entrepreneur, a former ONDCP staffer, and current shill for the forced rehabilitation of cannabis consumers, Project Sam has repeatedly demeaned the medicinal value of cannabis. The idea, and this is from their website, quote, "Opium has medical value, and it's called morphine. Marijuana has medical value too, but just as we don't smoke opium to receive beneficial effects, we need not smoke marijuana to get its medical value. It is important to distinguish between the whole marijuana plant material and individual components within the marijuana plant. Some constituents of marijuana, including THC, are available today in pill form, such as Marinol." Well, this idea that the chemicals in the plant are medicinal, but the plant itself is not, is one of the prime talking points of Project Sam. It's a plan to reapportion the supermajority public support for medical marijuana to the support of cannabis-based pharmaceuticals. This serves three purposes: making pharmaceutical companies rich, undercutting support for plant marijuana, and maintaining the criminality of plant marijuana that allows for drug courts to force cannabis consumers into rehabs they do not require or want. Now, on Sunday, Dr. Gupta's about-face as a medical marijuana supporter culminated in a CNN documentary called Weed. In the show, a 5-year-old girl suffering 300 epileptic seizures a week is treated with a cannabis extract high in cannabidiol, the non-psychoactive ingredient in marijuana. Her seizures are reduced to 1 per week. A 19-year-old man suffering a rare spastic disorder of the diaphragm smokes cannabis, and his halting hiccup-like speech transforms within 1 minute to the steady voice you'd expect from a healthy young adult. And elderly patients in Israel are shown treating Alzheimer's, pain, and depression with raw plant cannabis. Well, Kevin Sabet and Project Sam are now trying to spin this landmark television program to their advantage. They issued this recent press release following the airing of Weed that characterizes Dr. Gupta's endorsement of medical marijuana as a sarcasm quotes reversal, and going so far as to portray Dr. Gupta's own statements like, "It is irresponsible not to provide the best care we can as a medical community, care that it could involve marijuana," as somehow being support for Project Sam's goal of keeping plant-based medical marijuana illegal. This is from the Project Sam press release, quote, "We are troubled that some of CNN's coverage of Dr. Gupta's views muddies the water on this issue. For example, a headline stemming from Dr. Gupta's upcoming documentary on CNN is, 'Marijuana Stops Child's Severe Seizures.' However, this story is about a child who is benefiting from a non-smoked marijuana extract that does not get her high because it only contains trace amounts of marijuana's active ingredient THC and high amounts of non-intoxicating CBD. Because most Americans think of marijuana as the THC-filled smoked substance, this headline is misleading. It would be like broadcasting, 'Opium cures pain for millions of people,' instead of acknowledging that morphine, an extract of opium, is the substance at play." Well, notice how easy Sabet dismisses the 19-year-old man who was smoking raw plant marijuana chock full of THC to focus on the little girl using the CBD extract. And Dr. Gupta even delved into the potential for a high created by that young man's marijuana use, the 19-year-old who was smoking pot, and found that not only did he not get high, he was perfectly capable of driving Dr. Gupta around in a car shortly after getting high. Oh, and by the way, opium is used as medicine in America in a tincture form called paregoric. And morphine will get you really, really high. It's also curious how Sabet is now demonizing THC when his own Project Sam website is touting the medical benefit of synthetic THC contained in Marinol pills. Apparently THC is okay when it's by itself in a pill, and CBD is okay when it's a non-smoked extract, but CBD and THC naturally occurring in a marijuana plant, well, that's a dangerous addictive drug with no medical benefit. As for the little girl with epilepsy, she gets her CBD extract from a team of brothers who, empowered by Colorado's constitutional medical marijuana amendment, are growing marijuana plants for her. Project Sam and its board members, particularly Dr. Christian Thurstone in Denver, that rehab entrepreneur that they featured in the Weed documentary, they opposed Colorado's medical marijuana law. If they had their way, those brothers would be a continuing criminal enterprise under Colorado law and subject to numerous felonies, including a 4-year mandatory minimum sentence for sales to a minor. It is more than likely that little Charlotte would still be suffering 300 seizures a week, assuming she would have lived through them. Here's another quote from their press release. "Just because marijuana is a Schedule I drug, it does not mean that medicines based on certain parts of the marijuana plant cannot be approved in the United States." No, that's exactly what Schedule I means. Dr. Gupta did a great job explaining in Weed how legitimate researchers are denied research because of the Schedule I designation. I wrote about this in 2010. There was a New York Times story called "Researchers Find Study of Medical Marijuana Discouraged." Here's the quote from Shirley Simpson, a spokeswoman for NIDA, the National Institute of Drug Abuse, quote, "As the National Institute on Drug Abuse, our focus is primarily on the negative consequences of marijuana use. We generally do not fund research focused on the potential beneficial medical effects of marijuana," end quote. And Sabet and Project Sam continue by putting words into Dr. Gupta's mouth. They say, quote, "We fully agree with Dr. Gupta that the medicinal value of marijuana should be studied to develop pharmacy-obtained, legitimate, standardized, non-smoked medications." Well, you know what? I searched Dr. Gupta's essay on medical marijuana, could not find the words pharmacy or standardized or non-smoked. In fact, I saw numerous people in his documentary smoking a non-standardized plant not obtained from a pharmacy, and Dr. Gupta was endorsing their use. However, I did find legitimate 3 times. I was too dismissive of the loud chorus of legitimate patients. Marijuana doesn't have a high potential for abuse, and there are very legitimate medical applications. And stuck in the middle are legitimate patients who depend on marijuana as medicine. Without the medical legalization enacted in Colorado, the 5-year-old and the 19-year-old profiled in weed would still be suffering their life-threatening seizures and downing handfuls of stupefying, side-effect-laden, toxic, addictive pharmaceuticals to no avail. When Kevin Sabet tells you he supports research into marijuana's medical value, even under the best-case scenario of the FDA approval process, those young people would be suffering for another 2 to 4 years. That's what Kevin Sabet supports. Hey, that's all the time we got here. Thanks for joining us from Port St. Lucie, Florida, in the home of Kyle Vogt. I'm Radical Russ. Till next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it,